Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Central Technology webinar in partnership with Object First, making on-premises immutability accessible for every business. We anticipate this webinar taking around an hour of your time today, but it's packed full of informative content and hopefully some really good information to take away. It is important that you do stay right until the end for details of how to claim your £20 Amazon gift card and the potential to win a further £100 in our prize draw. All details will be announced at the end of today's webinar session around midday, when we hope to wrap this session up. The Q&A is also live, so if you do have questions throughout the webinar, anything that we've not covered, anything that you want to ask in relation to it, please do put them in the Q&A and we'll open the Q&A session up at the end. We have already received a few questions in advance, but please do just add them into the chat. And between who's hosting today's webinar, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to cover off anything that you've got. And finally, just a big thank you for firstly signing up to the webinar, and of course the all-important thing of actually turning up and attending us for this session. So to kick things off, and by means of introduction, my name is Matt Atkinson. I'm the sales manager here at Central Technology for the Cloud and Data Solutions team. I'm joined by co-founder and my colleague Chris Barr, technical director at Central Technology. Marv Anson, sales engineer from Object First, and finally David Johnson, channel account manager at Object First. Well, for those of you who potentially are new to working with CT or currently don't work with us, Central Technology is a proactive and partnership-driven managed services provider with a real specialism in data resiliency solutions. As a business, CT has been established since 2002. And we've now grown a headcount of around 120 employees across the business, predominantly based out of our head office here in Chesterfield, supported by 2 regional branch offices in Dorset and Leicester. And in the cloud and data solution side of what we do, we operate a 100 gig core network across our 5 geographically diverse data center locations within the UK. And within there, we protect in excess of 12 petabytes of data, all of which, as I say, is in our own private cloud infrastructure. So end to end, CT takes that responsibility and ownership, and therefore can guarantee security of your data. We have an established channel partner program. So if you're joining us today from a value-added reseller, a managed service provider, or systems integrator, and you're interested in being able to resell CT's cloud and data solutions services to your clients, then please do contact us regarding our channel partner program, where we offer fully white label solutions where you can then deliver end services to your clients. And we're platinum. We're actually the largest platinum Veeam cloud and service provider here in the UK. So we're really proud of our ongoing commitment and partnership with Veeam. As a business, we've worked with Veeam pretty much since its inception as a company back in 2006. And certainly from 2018 onwards, we've really accelerated the growth, as I say, in the Veeam cloud and service provider part of what we do, the VCSP. And we have full scope 9001 and 27001 ISO accreditations. So that guarantees we've got quality management systems in place, along with information security management systems. So from the office front door to our data center locations, full scope ISO really does give you that guarantee that your data is in safe hands. We're proud to be an approved supplier on the G-Cloud 14 framework. So if you're joining us from a public sector organisation, that's one of the ways that you can procure our services. And earlier this year, we're really proud to bag Veeam's backup for Microsoft 365 Partner of the Year. And a further one to add in there as well is, of course, what you're joining us for today, which is around our relationship with Object First. So we were the first official UK reseller for Object First, and we're about 18 months into our partnership now. So this is the second webinar that we've run on Object First, but really excited now that we can share some real life use cases and success stories that we'll cover later in today's session around how we've deployed OOTBI into various different industry verticals, various different customer sizes, and really brought the benefits of Object First and the OOTBI appliance to life. So really look forward to sharing some of those details and some of the customer success we've seen so far. So focusing in particular on our Veeam-based cloud and data solutions today, CT, through its cloud infrastructure, offer secure cloud backup with Immutability. So we have two sort of variants, if you like. We have the traditional Veeam Cloud Connect platform, where we provide cloud-based immutability within there as well, along with our Object Storage S3 compatible cloud backup. So two different offerings depending on your particular use case needs and requirements. We then offer a cloud backup for Microsoft 365 offering in excess of 100,000 mailboxes now protected within that environment that we run, again, all in-house on our infrastructure, and both variants of our standard and premium offering come with immutability now as standard. We then have secure disaster recovery as a service for both Hyper-V and VMware workloads. So if you lose your primary data center location or host infrastructure, then you can invoke disaster recovery in CT's private cloud infrastructure, ensuring from an RTO perspective, we can get you back up and running and IT systems available as quickly as possible. And then, of course, our secure on-premise immutability offering. And I'm now going to hand over to David Johnson from Object First, who's going to take you through the evolution of Object First so far.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matt. So yeah, obviously we're here to learn a little bit more about CT. Those of you who have been working with CT for a while have likely been contacted about Object First, and you might have heard certain bits. So I'm just going to take you a bit about how we've changed, really, and some of the new features that have come out. So as we always start with, it's really important to understand where we've kind of come out from. So Veeam themselves were founded in 2006 by the two very founders on the screen right now, Ratmir and Andre. They founded Veeam and they sold in 2019, and then they've come and created Object First straight afterwards. And again, right to the core messages of who we are, what we do. Our aim is to ensure that no end user has to pay ransomware ever again. A couple steps that they've tried to take to get to that stage is they wanted to make the best storage product for a Veeam solution. So you get the same seamless experience that you have with Veeam as you have with ours. They wanted to make sure it was ransomware proof out of the box. So very, very minimal setup to be able to get it to that immutability level. And they follow the same zero trust guidelines that Veeam have been sharing with their base for the last 15 to 20 years. So yeah, we're in good shape. So when you first would have started working with us, we would have been very, very much centralized to the UK, Germany, and France. So in that time, we have now spread out quite far. And we're still going in only one direction with more countries to come off. So, you know, what we do find is a lot of end users nowadays have sites in multiple different regions as well as just in the UK. So just happy to let you guys know that both CT and ourselves can help facilitate anything that you need across the globe, as you can see by the orange places here. And like I said, more of those countries in the grey will be coming online as well. So just again, sometimes one of the questions that we get asked, and in fact, one of the questions that came in a little bit before this is, you know, some fears of new companies and what happens if they go away. So just to let you guys understand, we're only going in one direction. There's no signs of us slowing down. There's no signs of us going anywhere. We're completely transparent with the marketplace in terms of what we've sold, what we've achieved, where we're installing, and we are growing our employee base to match the level of growth that we see and expect to gain in the last stages of this year and for next year. So I think it's interesting because, again, it sets up to what the belief system of the founders were thinking about when we were starting. So as I mentioned, 2020, they started the product development on OOTBI. The vision was always there, create a hardware physical box that was a repository specifically for Veeam. a lot of R&D in that time. And then they launched the brand, launched the company. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. And then in February 2023, they launched their first two products in America, 64 terabyte and 128. And what I like to share with everybody is that in between June 22 and February 23, they actually went out and did a bit of research, which I'll talk about in a second. And then, as you can see throughout the time, we've released new models. We've released the 192, we've released the 2040, 432, and there are more products to come as well. But yeah, if we go to the next slide, I just want to talk to you about that little gap. So effectively, just before we actually launched our first product and were able to sell, because we were waiting for a particular version of Veeam to be able to launch, in that time, our founders went out with a bit of research, really, just to really double down on the pillars that we were marketing ourselves into, matched exactly what people were expecting. So one of the things they found when they were doing their market research is that in the last decade, the proportion of ransomware attacks that go after your backups has increased significantly. 74% of all attacks, I think this is even higher now, but 74% of all attacks go after the backup data to ensure that you cannot instantly recover. So if you have a backup solution on premise, you really need to try to make sure that is immutable as best, or cannot be changed, cannot be deleted, and cannot be encrypted. Otherwise, you could be in trouble. Bit of the research also found that for a lot of partners working with many of the different repository installers that are there for Veeam, there was a level of complexity that end users found difficult to manage those devices. Partners found it difficult to install those devices, or it was at least long-winded to be able to get your engineers up and running and trained. And from an end user perspective, trying to constantly keep the updates and going on the training courses to ensure, or having to pay out to have somebody come out. They wanted to remove all that complexity and to provide something to an end user that can literally sit in a corner, do its job with minimal oversight, with minimal hands-on, to ensure that you and your IT team can focus on other things such as security and keeping people out in the first place. And the other side of it was the limited power right at the end there. So a lot of what we have seen is a massive rush in recovery, in terms of when you're doing a DR plan and then you have your backups in the cloud. Great. A lot of cloud providers provide immutability. The only downside to only having your main backup in a cloud is if something was to happen, you to lose your data and you needed it back, there's the slowdown of how long it takes to come back over the basically the internet, and you're limited to the bandwidth of your internet of how fast you can recover. And a lot of people miss out on the cost, the hidden cost of every day you are not trading at full capacity, what that cost to your business equals. If you have an on-premise solution that you can rely on and recover back from instantaneously, then you will minimize how long you are out of action, minimizing that cost to you. Now, really excited to talk about, and the reason, the large part of the reason for this is to talk about our new offering. So Object First have launched a consumption model, which allows a secondary way to purchase Object First devices through partners like CT still. So we're not going direct. This is not a direct model. It is still through the channel. But what this allows is, obviously we have had for the last year and a half the ability to effectively buy the box outright via the CapEx traditional model, which would come with software updates included in the purchase time, 3 or 5 years. It would include the technical support, would include the on-site service, and effectively the longest you'd be able to buy that for is about 5 years. And now with the consumption model, which is far more of your traditional pay per use, then that again comes up with the software updates. It comes with the technical support. It comes again with the on-site service if something was to happen to the power supply, the fans, the chip, the disk. But equally, for as long as you are renewing the subscription, then effectively the box will just keep going. And if it gets to the point where it gets to about 5 years and we take the decision that actually that box is probably on its last legs, we will actually swap that box out for a brand new box, no extra cost to yourself. So effectively you could have immutability for 10, 15, 20 years, as long as you wanted, without having to rebuy anything else on the consumption route. So, why would you go down the consumption route? So it's just an alternative at the end of the day. If the immediacy of the capital isn't there, this offers you a flexible route to be able to go. The minimum backup capacity on the consumption is 17 terabytes, and it can grow right the way up to 7 petabytes. There is that no upfront payment. So as soon as you go onto that monthly billing, which I'm sure many of you are used to, especially if you're working with CT, then effectively it starts at the beginning of the next month, and the tie-in that you do, and this is where we kind of differ from many people that do what offer consumption models, is we actually only tie you in for a year. So you're not tied in for 3 years, 5 years. You are literally only tied in. Whatever you sign up to is just for 1 year, and then it will renew every time you change contract, which could be at the end of the 1 year. It could work out when you do the sizing exercise with us that we actually plan a predicted, let's alternate at month 9, month 10, to get you onto the best level, so you're paying less overages, and saves you money in the long term. So it effectively gains you that cost efficiency as you scale. And again, the more you use, the lower your cost per TB starts to come down, which we know in this space is what a lot of people focus on. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the hardware refreshes are included. So all that refreshes, the updates, if something was to go wrong, we have contracts with the box providers that will come out and service the devices the very next day, and basically get you back up and running. And you don't apply, with the way we want to look at this is you're not paying for appliances anymore, you're paying for the data that you're using. So that those improvements. So we have found ourselves in certain solutions where people don't have, you haven't thought about immutability this year, you don't quite have the budget, so you end up putting it into next year, which obviously means that you don't have immutability for another 6-7 months. This gives you that freedom of being able to say, actually, we need immutability now, we want to be protected, so let's get this in at the from the outset. Yeah. And obviously, CT are perfectly poised to be able to discuss this with you, and we will go through what your environment looks like and that growth, which leads me well onto this. So if you take a look at the orange graph, which is your traditional CapEx model, obviously it is an upfront investment, which then balances out across the term that you've got the device, and then you get to a stage where you will look to refresh, and then that you're having to invest another set of capital and keep going. So over time, as you're entering into 5 years, your cost exposure really easy to see, but effectively it is taking that capital right out the front. The consumption on the purple line effectively grows as a nice steady monthly over the monthly term, and each time it gets those blue dots, effectively all those blue dots are basically measuring is that might be a time where you are moving into the next tier, or you are moving into certain overages, and then you might be wanting to go back to the likes of Matt at CT, and effectively saying, you know what, we've got more data, we're growing at a lot faster, which is always a massive positive to yourselves as businesses. But if you are growing faster than you want, it might mean that you're no longer on the best contract for you. We are all about flexibility here, so you just go straight back to Matt as you're getting towards that month 12, and you'd effectively say, look, is there a better way for me to do this? And we will all look at what's the best rate for you and put you on a new tier, which will give you a better rate, so you are paying less over time. As I said, as you start going up the stack towards 54 and 60 months, the actual costs per TB will come significantly down to you as well. So in terms of, if you're looking at across this as a 10-year model versus 5-year CapEx, you actually could end up spending a lot less money as you start growing your data. So incredibly simple to adopt. So step one really is obviously the very first thing is identifying that you want to move on to an immutable platform. And then step two is you basically contact CT and you go through what your data looks like. We will be on that call. So Marv, RSE will be on that call alongside CT, and we will basically plan out what your data growth is expected to look like. There is always going to be that room for unexpected growth, but we will plan that with you, and we will basically present to you a couple of options effectively. So it will look like, all right, based on all the data that you have provided, we think you will grow from let's say 20 terabytes through to 40 terabytes at this point, 60 terabytes at this point, 90 terabytes at that point. And we will effectively say our best option is for you to choose this tier for this period of time. And then when you get to this stage, you move on to a new tier, which will give you a better rate than paying certain overages. So we will do all that planning with you. We'll make sure that you feel comfortable. CT will make sure that you feel comfortable before you sign up to absolutely anything. Then you place your order with your Object First partner, which will be CT. And then we will ship you the Object First appliance. The only question is when it comes to the insurance, you would put Object First on the insurance for the particular product. So if something happens, it's us that gets the payout for it. You will then be billed a fixed monthly amount by your Object First partner, and telemetry on the device must be on so we can track the usage, so then we can work out the overages. But again, if we start to see that the overages are starting to go up and up and up, and you're growing at a little bit faster of a rate than anticipated, CT and us will come back to you and have that conversation with you about what's happening and try and get you on a better rate if that is possible. And so, yeah, we agree additional capacity as your needs grow. So as Seda mentioned earlier, you are only tied into a 1-year contract from the outset. Every time you go up to a new contract at a better rate, you then re-sign up for another 12. We don't anticipate that to happen too many times more than one, unless you have a very unusual fast growth in 1 year, not a lot in the next years. But again, that's not your norm. That's not your average. Those are outliers. So yeah, effectively, we're quite excited about this. We do believe it will give you a secondary way to purchase. If for those of you that are really, really interested, but you didn't factor it in this financial year, this is a different way to get around it and ensure that you're protected today rather than later. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, who is going to talk to you a little bit about, for those of you who aren't familiar with what Object First actually does, Marv will allude to what we do, where our strengths are, and what that means for you. Over to you, Marv. Thank you.
All right, thanks, DJ. Hi, everyone. Over the next few slides, I'll be taking you through a bit more detail on the Object First technology and what our OOTBI does. Just gonna think I can control it here as well, actually. Okay, there we go. So we're going to start from immutability. This is a word you'll hear us say very often. Our solution is called OOTBI, and that stands for out-of-the-box immutability. And so considering immutability as a key function of the security features that we offer, we talk about what true immutability looks like. In the industry today, you know, there's a lot of conversations going on around this, and some of those come down to what are the steps that you need to take to get to a point where you can say that the solution you have or the way you've set up your environment is in a way that is truly immutable. And the definition of that, of course, it means that you have data that cannot be interfered with. So it cannot be deleted or modified in any way by anyone who has access to the organization, whether an internal person or an external person. So if we're looking at how to achieve true immutability, these are the 5 features and steps that we've seen in the industry. And so these are not unique to Object First, but more industry focused on the steps that you need to make sure that you're checking all of them and taking them in order to be in a position where you can say that you are achieving this. So the first of which is having S3 object storage, which we provide with our solution, as we only support the S3 protocol. Zero time to immutability. This is a really key one because there are lots of organizations that, you know, would provide some sort of immutability, but there's often some level of coding or configuration to get to that stage. The increase in number of steps you need to go through to achieve that true immutable state, we consider to be more of a security risk because that involves more human interaction and involvement in the process. Zero access to destructive actions. So this needs to cover, like I said, both internal and external factors. So internal admins who may be compromised in one way or the other, as well as considering attacks from outside the organization. Segmenting of backup storage and software. I'll talk about this a bit more when we're talking about the zero trust data resilience principles that we follow, but the is a key focus on that separation and segmentation, not just being logical, but also physical, in that you have a backup software and you have a backup hardware solution. And finally, a purpose-built target appliance. This means that you're not just repurposing a bunch of disks within your environment to send your backups to, but having an appliance that has been created for the purpose of having security, flexibility, and putting you in a position where you're ransomware proof. So zero trust principles. These principles have been in the industry for a very long time. And when they came about, it was to do things like assuming breach, segmenting access. There was an understanding that not everyone within the organization needed to have roles to do everything. And even within business functions, that still needed to be limited as much as possible, giving things like least privilege access, making sure that, every user application device is tracked and linked to one person, and there's a limit on what they can do to fulfill their roles and functions within the organization. We also see things like multi-factor authentication, which is quite popular today, and just taking those extra steps beyond a simple password to make sure that there's more security across the board. Now, some of the reasons why you would not, I talked about the segmentation of the backup software and storage. Some of the reasons why you would not want to have those together is because a breach on one side of that setup means a breach to the entire system. If your operating system is compromised, everything that's connected to it would be compromised as well. And so that reducing the kind of attack, the surface area for attack is really important. And these are the things that we've put into consideration when looking at the Zero Trust Data Resilience Principles, which were put together by Veeam and Numberline Security. And the purpose of this was introducing backup principles into the already existing Zero Trust principles. And what we're trying to do here is emphasizing things like the backup rule. So you have 32110, where you need to have 3 copies of your data on 2 different kinds of media, 1 offsite copy, 1 immutable or air-gapped copy, and 0 errors when you try to recover. Now, the 0 errors when you try to recover is perhaps one of the most important ones, because there's a history of organizations just backing up their data without testing that it can be recovered. And this means when you get to the point where you do need to recover, there's no prior test to make sure that that is possible. And they often find that they're in a position where they have backed up, but they're not able to recover. And so there's no point to it. And finally, having that immutable backup storage as a purpose-built appliance. So that's where we come in. And all of those kind of issues and gaps in the organization is what our founders considered when putting together OOTBI. And so what we'd like you to take away from today are the 3 main pillars of our solution, which is secure, simple, powerful. Everything that we'll talk about today falls under one of these 3 pillars. And from a security perspective, out-of-the-box immutability means 0 time to true immutability. As soon as you create a bucket, an S3 bucket on the OOTBI appliance, it is immutable right off the bat. And we give no access to, we give 0 access to root or OS. So that means that you don't have any access to the operating system or to be able to do anything such as modifying the data or changing it in any way. You also, from the simple perspective, you're able to go box to backup within 15 minutes. So say you have put in, it's a physical appliance, it's a 2U chassis, you put that into your data center and it's all set up and your networking is ready to go. As soon as you put it on, you're able to get to the point where you're accessing the user interface within 15 minutes. And so there's very little expertise needed for this to go from box to backup. And powerful, our solution is really powerful. Each 2U chassis will give you 1 gigabyte per second ingress speed within that single node. And you can scale up to 4 nodes within a cluster. So that will give you 4 gigabytes per second ingress speed. And on our largest node, that goes as far up as 8 gigabytes per second. And you're seeing about half of every ingress speed numbers on recovery. So for where we're seeing 2 gigabytes per second, we're seeing 1 gigabyte per second on recovery. And finally, having that immutable backup storage is really important. And so what we're trying to do here is emphasize things like the backup rule. So you have 32110, where you need to have 3 copies of your data on 2 different kinds of media, 1 offsite copy, 1 immutable or air-gapped copy, and 0 errors when you try to recover. Now, the 0 time to true immutability means 0 time to true immutability. As soon as you create a bucket, an S3 bucket on the OOTBI appliance, it is immutable right off the bat. And we give no access to, we give 0 access to root or OS. So that means that you don't have any access to the operating system or to be able to do anything such as modifying the data or changing it in any way. You also, from the simple perspective, you're able to go box to backup within 15 minutes. And all of this gives us then a ransomware proof solution. And so what we're saying to the industry is, we're not saying that you won't get hacked. In fact, we always assume breach. So we're always assuming that you either already have been hacked or will be hacked in the future. But the position that we're saying you'll be in with our solution is that you'll never have to consider paying ransom. The different countries in the world today where paying ransom is becoming increasingly illegal. And sometimes even if it weren't illegal, organizations just would not be able to afford it. We've had many examples of organizations going bankrupt or having to close down because they've been hacked and they're just not able to pay the ransom, afford the ransom, or they're not being allowed to by authorities. And so we're saying you'll be in a position where your data will remain untouched because it'll be immutable, and you won't have to consider that. You will just set up a new environment and recover all of your data that you have stored on the OOTBI. So looking at what we have in the industry today, as we go into the market and have conversations with different end users, we're seeing a variety of setups in the industry today. So direct attached storage is perhaps the most common one. And this is because it's been in the industry for a really long time. It is simple to use. It can be as powerful as the solution that, the hardware that it's run on, but it is not secure because there is no segmentation of backup software and storage appliance. Like I said, it is just direct attached. So if one end of that is attacked or compromised in any ways, the entire solution would be. With dedupe appliances, we're seeing more of this in the market as well. A few things around this is that you're seeing really high numbers on dedupe. So you're seeing 50 to 1, 65 to 1. However, because of the way that data is compressed, it requires a huge amount of performance in order to recover that, and it takes a long time as well. We're also seeing that, you can't dedupe data that has been pre-compressed or pre-encrypted in any ways. And so there's often a requirement to turn off that encryption and then encrypt that data at rest. And we consider this to be a security risk just as the gap that is left there. And finally, with the Veeam hardened repository, this, you can have immutability with this. However, there are a few things there. One, it's basically like a DIY solution. So you need someone with extensive Linux expertise to be able to work this out, and they would be fully responsible for the patching, updates, making sure that anything that they're introducing to the environment is not going to crash something else, which is a really difficult job to do when you're speaking to the person who's responsible for that. And finally, we have the OOTBI, which is our, out-of-the-box immutability, and my next few slides will just go through simple, secure, powerful, and how we fit into that. So looking at the zero trust data resilience principles I talked about, this is an ideal environment when we look at this architecture. We often get the question, where will OOTBI sit within an environment? And say here you have your production site, and you have your backup storage, your backup software, which will be Veeam, as we only support Veeam users at the moment. And we have the S3 protocol. So we only, again, have limited that to a single protocol that then accesses the OOTBI. So your OOTBI will sit within your primary data center. And this is for proximity to production, but also gives you access to the instant recovery function that we have. With the instant recovery function, if you're in the case of an incident where you're hit or attacked, you can spin up the data that you have directly from the OOTBI and provide it with some sort of compute. So say you're using VMware, for example, your vCenter will be providing the memory and CPU, and you spin up the data directly from the OOTBI. And you're able to do 20 instant recovery sessions for this per node. You can then also have your secondary layer where it could be a DR site where you have another OOTBI. It could be a managed service provider that's providing you with immutable OOTBI space, or a public cloud provider. So there are a few ways that you can set up your environment to make sure that you have immutability both on-prem and off-prem in order to follow those data resilience principles we talked about earlier. So I have this here just to emphasize the flow of data as well. So we have the backup software, and that's Veeam. So everything that you're doing in Veeam today, you will continue to do. And this is because the configuration still comes from Veeam. All of the setting up of your backup jobs, your backup copies, retention policies, and schedules, all of that happens on Veeam. You then send that data into your OOTBI in your primary data center. In this case, you can then do a backup copy. In Veeam terms, that would be a copy or a copy move, and then send that to a secondary site. You can also use Veeam's scale-out backup repository, and you will have your primary data center to be your performance layer, and the secondary side to be capacity tier. In the capacity tier is where then you can have another OOTBI, a managed service provider, or one of the public cloud providers for long-term retention. So we have this report. So with our immutable solution, our engineers have curated it to be that way, and we're very confident that it is. But we also wanted this external validation to go through the process of being tested by independent ethical hackers. So they've simulated a situation where there's a ransomware attack, everything has been compromised, and we want to know what happens. So over a series of 54 days, they've gone through the process of a series of tests, and they've come out with this final report that you can find on our website, can be shared with you as well. So what this is saying is that even if all of the customer secrets, including the administrator credentials and the bucket credentials, are all known to the attacker still cannot modify data that's been stored on an OOTBI appliance. Now, this makes a huge difference because as a storage vendor, we're very aware that not many storage vendors, if any, will allow their kit to be tested, and many of them have within their contract that you can't test their kit. But what this is saying, and we've done this test not just with the NCC group, but other organizations in the US as well, this is saying that if you get hit, when you get hit, it doesn't matter who in your organization is compromised or how far the extent of the ransomware hit, your data on OOTBI is safe and secure. It is immutable, so it has not been changed. It cannot be deleted, and you can recover instantly from it using our tools. So finally, this just shows you the range of sizes we have. You just talked about the consumption model. This sizes here, 20, 40, all the way to 432 at the different node sizes we have. And you're able to mix and match as well within a cluster. So I mentioned you can have 4 nodes in a cluster. You can start off with, say, a 128 and decide that you need a bit more a few years down and you want to add just a 20 terabyte. All of that will be fine. So we're able to scale from as little as 20 terabyte all the way to 7 petabytes. And that's because we're able to have 4 full clusters within a single performance tier and extend it that way. On the other side of this is the consumption model, just to link back to what you just talked about earlier. With our consumption model, taking out the node sizes there because it's no longer relevant to you. All that matters is the capacity that you can start with and how far you can grow. So the minimum commit will be 7 terabytes. However, you can scale just as far as 7 petabytes on this as well. So that brings me to the end of the technical bit of this. Our summary here is always secure, simple, powerful. That's what we want you to take away when you think about the OOTBI solution. It is purpose-built for Veeam, so we would support only Veeam users. Our immutability is out of the box, 0 time to true immutability. It is really easy to configure. You can do so in 15 minutes without much expertise at all. And we will support instant recovery sessions for all incidences. Thank you.
So to cover off a few bits that Marv and DJ have been going through there, we selected OOTBI, the OOTBI appliance to add into our product set a couple of years ago. And traditionally, within recovery scenarios, you'd have operational recovery where someone's deleted a file, something like that's gone wrong, the infrastructure's still up and running. There were disaster recovery scenarios where there's been a fire, flood, or theft, and so people would look at DR environments to get up and running again. And with the advent of ransomware becoming a significant risk now to organizations, there's now a third one in there, which is cyber recovery. And quite a few occasions the disaster recovery is conflated with cyber recovery, and where someone's wanting to get up and running again after a ransomware incident, then in that scenario, you want to be able to recover from the backup files onto the production infrastructure, which is the hardware is still okay, it's still operational. And whereas if you were to fail over into a DR scenario, you might have to consider the impact on how people work. With Veeam, you've got the key features such as instant recovery, where you can power the virtual machines on straight from the backup files. And so in a ransomware scenario, your hardware's okay, use instant recovery, and with the Veeam combined with the OOTBI appliance and the high performance flash storage, you can get up and running, and the operational impact of the organization is then taken care of. Everybody can carry on working as they were. And then in the background, you can migrate your workloads back to the production infrastructure. So the instant recovery, where you can power straight on out of the backups, or quick rollback, where you do an incremental restore to where you were at your previous known good point, ideal to recover from those cyber incidents. And as you've seen here, with a particular customer very recently, they very large customer, where they'd around the retail sector, they'd implemented the OOTBI appliance to mitigate the risks that they were seeing, and their insurance company saw that very favourably as a significant reduction in risk for them, and saw a substantial saving there. The faster recovery, where we're asked around how to recover out of the cyber incidents, perfect for cyber recovery. And the scalability as well, so easy to add in more storage into the cluster, and as your cluster goes, you can then scale the Sabre clusters within Veeam as well. So in terms of all the scenarios we cover, then the OOTBI appliances align perfectly to that 3-2-1-1-0 rule of best practice. And in terms of the capex or consumption, which way to go, and going back to one of DJ's previous slides where you saw the steps, you've got the initial step if you go down the capex route, and you have to plan in with budgeting. And if you consider, a lot of organizations will use leasing providers to spread the costs of those, and by the time, especially these days with interest rates how they are, and there's the costs of the capex compared to the subscription model, it makes the subscription model very, very favorable. Makes it so much easier to plan from a budgeting perspective. You can say, well, this is the amount of storage you've got, plan the storage growth, and then the backup storage usage requirement just grows in line with that. Don't have to worry about capex when your appliance comes up for renewal, and you don't have to worry about renewing the warranty in a few years' time. It's just per terabyte. It's very, very predictable. It does align with other services that we offer. For example, we can offer the Veeam licenses on a subscription model monthly that can scale up and down, and also the same with our cloud storage platform. So we can offer a full end-to-end 3-2-1-1-0 aligned solution on an MRR model, no upfront investment. So yeah, really looking forward to adding this consumption model in to what we can offer.
Thanks, Chris. So just to open up the Q&A session, we will cover off the questions. I know some of the team have been frantically typing away in the background to cover off some of those that have come in during the webinar. So thank you very much for your engagement, and the team for picking those up. We did receive a couple in advance. Hopefully some of these will have been covered off. So one of them was what kind of management interface does Object First offer? So with Object First and the OOTBI appliance, it's a simple, intuitive, web-based user interface. And as you'd expect, that comes with role-based access control and monitoring dashboards. As standard, one of the big things is no access to root. So everything that you do on the OOTBI appliance is through the simple web intuitive-based user interface. And then in terms of...
We are improving upon that as well, Matt.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, TJ. And And then in terms of what's the right size OOTBI appliance for my organization, if you are interested in looking at sizing up the right OOTBI appliance, whether that be an upfront purchase or consumption, what we do as part of the process, one of our solutions consultants here at CT will assist in sizing the right size appliance, which is looking at your current backup job and configuration, making sure that they're aligned to what we consider best practices, along with any particular requirements and stipulations that you have from a regulatory compliance perspective are all within there. We factor in the immutable period and of course the projected data growth over the next 3 to 5 years, and then that allows us to go away and work out what size either upfront would you need to buy, or on a consumption model where the starting point would be in sort of month 1, year 1, and then obviously looking at what that long-term growth and sort of the sliding scale as you grow and that consumption model scales with you. So thank you for those questions in advance. Just to cover off some of the ones that have come in throughout the webinar, so we'll be sharing the recording, absolutely. That will be made available at the end of the session and will be shared with you all. So if there's anything you want to refer back to, the recording will be available for you to watch at your leisure. I know that DJ has responded as well around the sort of statistics for the ransomware attacks targeting the backup appliance. So that's Veeam-based research, but there's various other sort of industry sources as well that sort of confirm, backup data is a primary attack target for cyber criminals. So that's where that statistic comes from. And I'm going to just hand over to Chris just to cover the question around how Veeam is now supporting Proxmox workloads.
Yeah, so we've tested Proxmox with Veeam support when that came out. Quite a bit back now, I think. The object first OOTBI appliances, they go into Veeam backup application as just normal object storage repositories in there. So they're fully supported with it. So it's all the functionality that Veeam support with Proxmox fully supported with the OOTBI appliance.
Yeah, we also got a question on the consumption point about what happens if data goes the other way and shrinks instead, which is I think common in that space. So just to address that, the contract that you sign is for 12 months at the minimum commit. So you can obviously redo a new contract on consumption that if you're growing, but the minimum term is 12 months. If you are, if you're at 50 terabytes and you think, oh, actually I want to go down, you've got to wait out that 12 months. Now, when you compare that to many people that offer subscription services where they tie you in for 3 years and 5 years, that's a lot longer of a time to minimum commit, and they have the same no going down or shrinking as we do. So we do think that the 12 months is a bit of a game changer in this industry because we take a lot more of the risk away from you as the customer.
And just to add, there's a question there about how we work with Veeam, if it's a complement or a replacement to Veeam. So you would absolutely need to keep the Veeam software that you're working with. What you would do on the VBR side is create a repository and connect that to the OOTBI using the S3 protocol. The OOTBI appliance is a physical hardware that will sit within your physical data center, and you will have your networking and connectivity all up to your switching, for example, and have that connected to your Veeam server. That repository that you create on the VBR will then just immediately start sending your backups. However, you've whatever schedules or retention policies, sending that onto the OOTBI appliance, and there it will hold it immutable for as long as the retention policy that you set on the VBR side.
Brilliant, and I believe that's all the questions that have come in. So thank you ever so much for raising them, and hopefully we've answered them in full for you as well. Finally, obviously, it goes without saying a big thank you for attending today's webinar.